Barry, we were just on the heels of a wonderful conversation with Priceline, and you being in hotel business and working for one of the largest hotel companies in the world. Before we get down to the OTAs and their roles in distribution and so on, just at a high level, can you give us your perspective and about the challenges and opportunities within hotel business over the course of several years?
Well, several years. I don't know what I'm doing tomorrow. So there's a lot of things we can talk about. I mean, naturally, we touched upon globalization. Brands, absolutely important. But I'm going to focus on a couple of things, Apo. The guest and technology, which seems to be a theme from a lot of the folks earlier today. The guest from two perspectives. Who is the guest of the future? And how do we interact with them? You know, of interest, today, there's about 2.5 billion people in the middle class, something that Glenn alluded to. The statistics show, or the experts say, in about 15 years, there's going to be 5 billion plus people in the middle class. And that middle class is going to be made up of what we call today the millennials. And we know a lot of things about the millennials. The most important we know is they love to travel. They love different experiences. They like to move around. And then the question for us will be, how do we create a product that really attracts to the millennials? So we saw select service hotels in the last 5 to 7 years thrive on creating a nice place to stay, a clean bed, clean room, and free Wi-Fi, and of course, free breakfast. The question is, what do we do now, and what's the perspective on how we move forward with the millennials? And what we're calling it at Wyndham is it's really digital democracy. It creates this democracy around the ability to interact with this large group of travelers through a digital platform. And that's what we're thinking about every day. And that really ties very closely to technology. And it's no secret this industry, for many, many years before our time and during our time, has been a laggard in investments. And a lot of big brands, a lot of organizations have tried to go at it on their own, and it's been very challenging, although resources are available. And that's, it's an interesting shift to this industry, where we still forget sometimes this is a hospitality business where service is important. But technology has placed a huge factor, a big role in what hotel companies of the future need to think about. And that's something that we've just started to do at Wyndham. We've partnered with leading both software companies and Adobe and partners to help us move forward in our CRS. And we've recognized we have to create this partnership with them to help us get us to the next generation. And that's something that we're focused on, and we need to really move past what we've done in the future. And then there's the scary part that hangs above all of us around cybercrime. So as we become more digital, we're also thinking about what does that mean, because that's going to truly impact everything we do. That's a couple of things. It's not probably all the things. There's lots of things out there, but that's something we're thinking about.
Very interesting. You touched upon guests and customers, right? And the next generation of travelers being the millennials themselves. And the fact that they're so nonconformists, right? They don't necessarily conform to a brand. They have their own set of priorities. And obviously, digital space is where they live for the most part. And I love the term you use, actually, digital democracy. Now, given the fact that they're nonconformists, they're not traditional, we just talked about sharing economy, right? How do you combine that approach with this tremendous emergence of sharing economy, and how do you combat the power of the likes of Airbnb and the fact that they might be partnering up with companies like Uber, for example, to offer a complete package, so to speak? What is your strategy at Wyndham, or do you have one to combat these?
Yeah, I would say, a few years ago, many of us in the hotel business saw Airbnb come about, and we said, that's not going to bother us, right? That's about vacation homes. It's not going to affect the hotel business. But I think Glenn really put it well around the economics. Today, Airbnb has 3.6% supply. The expectation is by the next handful of years, they'll have 14.5% supply. If you look at supply that's coming into the world over the next year, without Airbnb, it would be at 1.2% in the US. That's going to almost double with the Airbnb supply. So we've got challenges with just supply, pricing power that we have to deal with. But more importantly, the millennials are going there because they want a local, they want to feel a cultural, they want that experience that Airbnb has done an amazing job, just as way of an example, in creating. And when you package that 60% of all hotel rooms in this industry are leisure stays, it makes it, a challenge for the hotels. And so what we're doing to react to that, recognizing that these are the facts in front of us, we can't ignore it, we have to deal with it, is we're rewriting all our content. We're creating a brand new platform. In the past, and many of you in this room perhaps, copy or content was often assigned to an entry-level hire out of school. Just go write about the accommodations, write some words on a piece of paper. We've recognized that has to change dramatically. And we've kind of changed our philosophy in terms of content development, in terms of content strategy, in terms of UGC, user-generated content. We're partnering with a couple of companies. We want to be the first economy brand to actually allow UGC to be published on our sites so people can feel it. We know it's always done at the top of the funnel in terms of the upper upscale or the luxury properties. But it's again, that digital democracy. It's the everyday traveler. How do you connect with them? And so we've put a big focus on that. We've changed our organization structure to be able to address that. And we're really pushing hard around that.
Excellent. Ever since the sharing economy notion came about, and we keep talking about as if sharing economy is a hotel company. It's not. It's yet another distributor of private homes for those travelers who opt out for that kind of service. Now, hotels, in my opinion, are in the driver's seat because you are the producer of that experience. Airbnb is, and it's just a distributor, right? So what happens once a customer buys through Airbnb and stays in an apartment or a home? Airbnb has no control over it, but you do, right? At the end of the day, distribution is one thing, but true stay experience, true hotel experience is another. Airbnb does not have any control over that. You do.
We hope.
Well, yes. I mean, you do in a sense that you have brand standards. Even in franchise hotels, you have your brand standards. Sure. You control the kind of experience.
Absolutely.
Because I think, Glenn made a point, hotels should be more concerned about Airbnb. Personal opinion, not really, because Airbnb does not control what happens during the stay, but you do as a brand, whether as a management company or brand company. Given that, have you seen any kind of occupancy erosion at your hotel? So when you look at the data, ever since Airbnb came about, right? Have you seen any decline in occupancies or corresponding declines in occupancies?
Yeah, and I can only comment relative to what we look at. We have not to date. Now, we also have to recognize that the Wyndham product is not a city center product. It is a roadside product, which we don't compete as dramatically in the Airbnbs. We also need to look at Airbnb occupancy, as somewhere in the low teens, so they're not necessarily dramatically making a huge impact. However, I think you will see and start to see in big city locations that there is some erosion, but not for us today significantly. There's been no impact.
And you're not alone. When we look at the macro data, we don't see any correlation, basically, between Airbnb and its power today, or perceived power, and the occupancies in hotel companies or hotels across the United States.
To your point, I mean, one of our challenges, and we're doing some work around it, it's a challenge for all of us, is, brands can be confusing. I sit here working for the largest brand in terms of numbers of hotels. But if you look at the proliferation of brands and how many are out there, how many different brands keep coming up, we have to do a much better job at trying to share what's the difference between, in my case, 15 brands. What do they stand for? What is that experience that you expect to get out of that? And that's a lot of the work that we're doing now. We're going through significant exercise to try and identify so that our guests can identify with that experience.
Absolutely. Personalization is another opportunity for you. Airbnb, again, where does the personalization take place? Is it at the distribution level or is it at the service level, right? So in my mind, personalization happens when a customer is staying and not necessarily when a customer is buying. Okay, it happens there too, but what really resonates with the customer is that personalization during their stay. Airbnb does not have any control over that, but you do. Now, moving away from that onto the new entrants into this distribution space, the big guys like Amazon, Google, and so on. So how do you see this playing out for hotels? They have huge power. They have captive audience. They've been around a long time. How do you see this playing out for hotels? Or do you see any kind of benefit that you as a company or the hotel industry would reap out of these new entrants into the space?
That's a great question, and we could probably spend hours talking about the pros and the cons. What we do know is the Googles, the Alibabas, and onward, they're here and they're real, right? They're in the travel space. We saw the TripAdvisor partnership with Booking last week. This morning, we announced a partnership with TripAdvisor that will be joining the instant booking platform. And so I think we've got to all learn how to better partner. And I think that works on two ways. But I challenge the OTAs, if we want to create a better experience. We used the example this last evening where Scott was stuck in a large queue here at the hotel. And maybe they could have done something about it, or maybe they couldn't. But if he had booked that on an OTA site, and I don't know if you did, Scott, the front desk would not have had their email address. So how would they have known what to do with them?
Right.
So if we want the experience to be better for all of us, the question is, are we going to share the customer? Because as an owner of a hotel, I have a couple of things I would like to get. Number one, I want to make money. I want the lowest cost possible on reservation. But I also want to know and own my customer. And the challenge we have today with these large entities that are coming aboard is what level of partnership are we going to create? Mm-hmm. We decided to go with TripAdvisor Instant Book because they will share the customer. It's a joint relationship. It's a sharing relationship. And so we have the customer, they have the customer. We're challenged then who can then do a better job. All these players are large, but how do we work better together? So at the end of the day, the customer who is standing at the front desk can have a great experience before, during, and then after they leave.
Great point. There's this tremendous fight over who owns the customer, right? And you made a very valid point there. In hotel business, and travel business by and large, we villainize OTAs. As a hotelier, we've created them, right? And then we turn around and villainize them. I think the answer is, how do you find that mutually beneficial partnership between hotels and OTAs? OTAs are not going anywhere. And they're going to be around. In fact, they're the biggest challenge in my mind to bricks and mortar travel agencies, not to hotels. I think OTAs are one of the biggest partners to the hotel industry and the airline industry as well.
Absolutely.
In my mind. And so we, in hotel space, in travel space, we need to stop villainizing them and start figuring out how we can partner. It's what you just said is personally music to my ears. Moving on to a different topic, we talked about mobile. There's e-commerce, now there's m-commerce, right? So because of mobile and the power of mobile. And I don't have teenage kids, so no idea. But my 5-year-old daughter never drops off the iPhone in her hand. As soon as she gets a hold of it, she glues to it. But you're right about that. But there's so much that can be done in the mobile space, and there's also mobile app utilization of mobile apps to define that customer journey, that customer experience at hotels. Do you see an environment whereby hotel brands come together and create one mobile app where they all share, and regardless where a customer is coming or staying, whichever brand, whichever company, they would use one platform to check in, check out, really go through the journey while they're staying in hotels. Do you see that kind of collaboration in hotel business?
Yeah, it's a great question, Apple. I mean, just on mobile, yes, I don't know about many of you. Over the weekend, I got in my car, and I realized I left my phone in my house. And I started twitching, right? I was driving down. How many of you have driven down like, oh my God, what am I going to do? What if my car stops and gets stuck? I mean, we all live without phones. So it is how we think about it. And so to your question, just to kind of relate, do I think we'll all get together? I mean, many of you know there's an entity called Roomkey today that exists that brought together many of the large brands to try and deliver an experience for a direct booking, whether it's your brand or a different brand. And naturally, that has been a bit of a challenge. I do think what has to happen in what I'll call this Internet of Things, where today our business and our home life have become so integrated to this device, it's become one, that in the travel space, whether it's brands coming together, which perhaps is fairly unlikely, but the ability to take your trip profile and truly integrate that together from the start to the end. And there are a number of providers today that have done that or tried to do that, but not truly done well on a mobile sense. To be able to do that, I do think that will happen, will bring people together. I do think there'll be a lot more connections to partnerships. We're doing partnerships with Starbucks. We're doing a partnership with a number of other brands to try and create a reason to use our app and a reward. But, you know, I think it's a great question. I think it is something that would not be out of the question in terms of real estate on mobile. But as we stand today, I think each of us are trying to find our own right now, try and build that relationship. And if that does happen, I think it's downstream, many years downstream.
All right. Moving on to a different topic now. Talking about economic cycles, swings in the overall economy. Every time you get into a downturn, economic downturn, there's this damping impact on prices, obviously, right? In the next cycle, who knows when that's going to be, right? When you look at a lot of the macro indicators, you don't see it coming anytime soon. But then there's just so much unknown around us, whether it's geopolitically oriented or economically oriented. Now, in your view, what could be done to thwart that kind of rate erosion when the next downturn comes around?
Yeah, I think a lot of the things we're talking about will help. Be a little bit different, although we all know from the cycles, the economic cycles, each one has dipped more dramatic than the previous. But there are a bunch of things that are different. Digital is number one. The ability to actually talk and engage with your customer. So as hotels do prepare, and there will be a downturn, we all know that is just the nature of this cyclical business. I think we have to think about a customer in terms of their journey, their life experiences, not just simply, you know, they need to stay. So I think getting an understanding of that, preparing for that, it's almost flipping around where the guest is, we're a host to the guest. It almost is a flip, where the guest is the host to the hotel, or the hotels, where we have to start to understand that. I think we're all in better distribution places. I think we've all worked hard to be in different places, and I think a lot of us have done a lot of work around revenue management and pricing, and when we should decide to reduce prices and when we shouldn't. And so I think those three things will help us. And I think knowing, for what the brand and that relationship is. People, have short memories. So just recognizing that there's an experience that they can achieve, I think that will help us with the next cycle. But, we'll all live through it, definitely.
I think that when the next cycle rolls around, it's going to be really important for hotels not to panic. Because when demand shrinks, it's just not there, whether you decline prices or not, right? So in such circumstances, demand becomes rather inelastic, therefore not responsive to changes in prices, right? And I have seen across all the hotel organizations I worked that we left a lot of money on the table because we feared. But I think the next time, when the next time rolls around, it's going to be important to see how strongly you can hold your ground and not necessarily succumb to that fear that decreasing prices will bring more occupancy. It just won't. All right. How are we doing on time with time? One more question. Okay, great. Thank you, Julia. All right, so let's wrap up. Now, again, in your view, what is that one thing that you would recommend as a hotelier to sustain the health of the hotel industry going forward?
So it's interesting. I don't think big matters anymore. I think it's speed and being fast. So as a hotelier, we're trying to think about how do we create an organization structure with partnerships that allow us to move fast, whether we're a big company or a small company. And I think that's what everyone really needs to think about. The speed of change is so rapid. Everyone's going to stand for who they are, and if you're a brand or an independent hotel, but the ability to move quickly, fast, and act quickly is going to really make a difference as we move forward in the next set of generations.
I cannot agree with you more.